Okay, today we're going to work on problem 1-2B, financial statements. Now, we are going to cover financial statements in chapter 4 as well. We're not doing a separate problem in chapter 4 with the financial statements. Any changes between this chapter and that one, you can look at your textbook or the PowerPoint to see those changes. But because we're covering our financial statements here in chapter 1, we're not going to be doing them in chapter 4. So what I've done is I've opened your problem in Paint. And just because for teaching reasons, I need to be able to write on it. And I'll explain that to you momentarily. If you don't have a dual screen, you might want to pull this up on your cell phone, or you can print out the working papers and handwrite them and leave the problem on your computer screen. Whatever works well for you. I know I've seen people print everything. I've seen people do half and half. Split screens work well too. For teaching purposes, I'm going to use a dual screen, so you won't always see the problem. The assets and liabilities of Wilderness Travel Service on April 30th and its revenue and expenses for the year are as follows. And it gives us all of this information, account numbers and amounts. Common stock was $25,000. Retained earnings was $155 as of May 1st. During the year, additional common stock of $10,000 was issued for cash, and dividends of $40,000 were paid. And our directions are to prepare an income statement, stockholders' equity statement, and a balance sheet. Now, if you look right here where all of your account titles are, what they've done is they've mixed them all together, okay? They have not sorted them by assets, liabilities, stockholders' equity. They are all mixed together. So before you even start the problem, my suggestion is that we sort these out in what they are. So our first one listed here is accounts payable, and this is what I meant by I want to write on it. Accounts payable, we know, is a liability. Accounts receivable and cash are both assets. Sorry, I'm doing the best I can here. That really is an A. Okay. Common stock, fees earned, and miscellaneous expenses, those are all stockholders' equity accounts, right? Now, we also know the stockholders' equity accounts can be broken down further. Fees earned is a revenue account. And this one is obviously an expense account. Okay. Rent expense, we know, is stockholders' equity. It is an expense account. Supplies is an asset. And then these last four are all expense accounts. Okay, so now that we have those labeled, that's going to help us create our statements a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that to my other screen. Again, you can open it up on another screen, open one up on your phone, one up on your computer, print one, however that works for you. Again, these working papers, you can complete them in Excel or you can print them and handwrite them. Completely your call. You're going to see throughout the class, most of the videos are done this way because I just had to redo them for the new textbook. But you will see some of the ones that I didn't have to redo. You'll see me handwriting the problems out. So whenever we create a financial statement, the first thing we need is a 3-line heading at the top. And the first part of the heading is the company name, and that is Wilderness Travel Services. The next line is the name of the statement that you're creating. And then the third line is the date. When we're creating an income statement, we're creating a financial statement that tells us what's happened throughout the whole year, okay? So this is going to say, for the year ended, and in our case, it's going to be April 30th, 2017. Now, our income statement, excuse me, tells us just that. It tells us our income. And we want to know how much money we made or lost. Did we make a net income? Did we make a net loss? We find that by taking our revenue minus our expenses. Okay, so our revenue minus our expenses is going to equal our net income or our net loss. Okay, and that's what our income statement tells us. So the first thing we're going to start with is our revenue. And if we look at, let me pull my problem back over. If we look at our problem, the only revenue account we found was fees earned. So we're going to take fees earned with a balance of $875. And we're going to list that on our first line. Now, You will also notice that there's two columns here, and those two columns are there for math reasons, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So 875,000. I'm going to format these into commas with no decimals. There we go. So we have our revenue. Our revenue is 875. We know to find our net income or loss, it's revenue minus expenses. So my first heading is going to say expenses with a colon. And then I'm going to go through my problem and I'm going to list all of my expenses and their balances. However, expenses are always listed from your largest expense, which in this case would be wages expense. Excuse me, I feel like something stuck in my throat. Again, from your largest expense, which would be wages expense, to your smallest expense, which in this case would be taxes expense at 10,000. The only exception is miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is always listed last, no matter how large it is. Okay. So let me drag that back off my screen. The first expense we're going to list is our wages expense. And we're going to list these in the first column. The next one is rent expense. And the reason we're going to list these in the first column, I'm sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. The reason we're going to list these in the first column is because we're going to need to add them before we subtract them from our revenue. And like I said before, miscellaneous will always be the last expense you're going to list. Okay. Now we need to do some math. We need to add all of these numbers up. So we're going to put a single line underneath this column to show that we're adding these numbers. And I'm just going to do a thick bottom border. If we were just to do a bottom border, it's not going to show because we already have lines here. So I'm going to put a heading up. Before I put my heading, we're going to take all of these expenses and we're going to indent them just a little bit there. And now I'm going to have a heading that says total expenses. And that one is also going to be indented actually under miscellaneous expense. I'm going to add up all of these numbers and put the answer to the right. Okay. So I'm going to use the sum feature of Excel. Since I'm working in Excel, we might as well let it do the math for me. You can add them up on a calculator and just type the number in if you'd like. Now I have my revenue and I have my expenses. So the next step is going to be to take my revenue, and again, I'm using Excel's math feature, so 875 minus 675, and I get $200,000. That $200,000 is a positive number, so this is my net income. If that $200,000 became a negative number, I would make that say net loss. Because I took those two numbers and did some math, again, I need that thick bottom border to show that I did math there. Okay. So as of right now, I know that my net income is $200,000. Now, the next statement I'm going to do is what's called the statement of stockholders' equity. And again, the first thing we need is our 3-line heading, Wilderness Travel Services for the year ended. This is another one of those financial statements that tells us what our total outlook is for the whole year. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to list on my stockholders' equity statement is what my balances were as of May 1st of 2016. Okay, the year prior. Now to find those, let me grab my problem and bring it back over here. This tells me that my common stock was 25,000 and my retained earnings was 155 as of May 1st of 2016. So that's fantastic that it tells me that. We're going to look at a problem later on down the road where you're going to have to calculate that to figure it out. So my common stock is 25,000 and my retained earnings is 155. Okay, again, I'm going to make these, this should be done for you by the time you get this file since I'm doing it now, but I'm going to make, just in case, make those into commas without decimal points. I have a total column here, so I'm going to make them add it together. I'm going to make Excel do the math. Fantastic. The next thing I'm going to add to this, my problem says, during the year, additional common stock of $10,000 was issued for cash. So that's the next thing I'm going to list here is that we issued common stock, and they said $10,000 was issued for cash. I'm going to use that really cool trick in the total line again. I'm going to come to the bottom right-hand corner and just drag that down, and we'll automatically add these two numbers together for each row. So we've got our common stock. The next thing we're going to list is our net income, and our net income is going to go under retained earnings, and we get the number from up above, which means if you mess up this statement, you're going to mess up this statement. If you have this one 100% right and this one is wrong, that is a big red flag that tells me you copied. So don't do that. Okay. So I'm going to type in my 200,000 there for my net income. And the next thing we're going to look at are my dividends. And my problem tells me dividends of $40,000 were paid. Okay. Now dividends were paid, so we're going to subtract $40,000. When we do that, it automatically puts the little parentheses around it, which is something we love about Excel, that it does things automatically. And then we want to find the balances as of April 30th of 2017. And I'm going to use that sum feature of Excel. Again, you can use a calculator. You can use, your brain. That's fine too. And drag that over one. So it tells me that my total rate here, I apologize for my lighting changing. The sun is moving around outside. That the total rate here is $350,000. Okay, and we're going to use this number. Our total retained earnings is $315, and our total common stock is $35. And we're going to use all of these numbers in our next statement. Okay. Our third and final statement is to prepare a balance sheet. So we're going to come over here to our balance sheet. Again, we need that same 3-line heading. However, a balance sheet is a snapshot in time. Our balance sheet tells us what our balances are on a specific time period, not so much how they change over the course of the year. So this one is simply going to say April 30th, 2017. On our balance sheet, the first thing we're going to list is our assets. You're going to see your balance sheet is going to cover the accounting equation. This is going to be your assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. Okay. You'll notice I centered the word assets there. Now, when we list assets on our balance sheet, we list them in order of liquidity. Okay. The word liquidity means how fast we can turn things into cash, or how easily we can turn things into cash. Well, the most liquid cash asset, let's try that again. Most liquid asset we have is cash because it's already cash. Okay, so we're going to list cash first. And I'm going to pop this out to the right-hand column. My problem tells me my cash balance is $156. Again, we're going to turn these into commas with no decimals. My second asset that can be turned into cash quickly is accounts receivable, because all I have to do is go collect the cash from other people. And that balance is 210, not 310. Okay. And then the third one is supplies. It's a little harder to sell some pens than it is just to go collect money. Okay. So now we're going to list our total assets. Whoops. Oh my goodness. And we're going to add those three numbers together. And again, whenever you do math, you need that underline. Just as if you were writing numbers down on a piece of paper and you were going to underline them before you put the total, you have to do the same thing in Excel. So as of right now, I have a total assets of $375. Now, if we remember correctly, it's assets equals, liabilities plus stockholders, equity, right? So right now our assets are $375. So we'll see if they equal in the end here. The next thing we're going to type in here is liabilities. And again, we're going to center that one. Whoop. Sorry. Now, our liabilities, if we look at our problem, let me drag my problem back over here. We've used all of those. So we're over here. Our liability was accounts payable, was our only liability. So accounts payable, and that number is going to go all the way over to the right, and that is $25,000. And then we're going to have our stockholders' equity. And I'm going to center that one as well. In my stockholders' equity, I'm going to list my common stock, which I'm going to come back over here. Common stock is $3,500. Oh, you know what we didn't do? Put that thick bottom border there. There we go. Common stock is $35,000. And retained earnings, back over here, was $315,000. So we're going to put that thick line under there because our next one is going to say total stockholders equity. Equity. There we go. This one's going to equal this one plus this one. So 35 plus 315 gives me 350. And then my last line, oh, hold on. Before I do that, we said we've got 375 there, right? We want that to equal our liabilities, which is $25,000, plus our stockholders' equity, which is $350. Now, if we look at those really quick, we can pretty much see that this is going to equal. So if we go to total liabilities and stockholders' equity, right? And we're going to do math, so we're going to put that line under there. I'm going to add my 25,000 plus my 350, and I get 375. Which is exactly what I had for my assets. So my assets do equal my liabilities plus stockholders' equity. Now, I am 100% sure that they equal. So I'm going to go ahead and put a double underline. So if I go in my borders button, it says bottom double border. So again, if you're doing this by hand on paper, you're just going to underline it twice. If you're doing it on Excel, you're going to grab the bottom double border, and you're going to do the same thing to that 375 that's under assets. Another thing about these statements, you'll notice I did not skip lines anywhere, okay? And the reason behind that is you don't want to leave any space for anybody to add things in as you're going, okay? It's just a very small step towards ethics and not allowing space for fraud in that case. So we are sure that these are equal. So we're going to come back to our statement of stockholders' equity, and we're going to put those same double underlines under those three columns, and the same thing with our net income. Now, the reason why we didn't double underline these as we went was because we didn't know if they were right, okay? We didn't know until we got here and everything equaled whether or not we were correct along the way. So you have to finish your balance sheet, make sure they're equal, and then you can go back and double underline the rest of your statements. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to use that inbox link at the side of your Canvas classroom and drop me an email. And I hope you have a great day.